See what people thought.
That's why I wanted to go by the meeting, but it didn't last until like 7. We're at 7.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess both days.
Good.
Okay, we are live. It's 4:03.
I guess, Jeff isn't in attendance today. Do we have, sorry, someone who'd be willing to do minutes?
Get real quiet.
I know.
I'm not good at minutes. I would do a good job.
Oh, I can take minutes. Is
Okay.
that-
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
I was.
Okay. Oh, I guess I should have called our meeting to order. So we'll do roll call.
Okay. John Sampson here.
Chris Mowen here.
Will Rowdy Bush here?
Christina Tracy here.
I think Jeff is in Austria.
That's
He
right.
won't be joining. Approval of last month's meeting minutes. Were there any comments on minutes?
I move to accept.
I'll second. Any opposed?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
Okay.
Mhm.
Great. Okay, our administrative items, scheduling the next meeting would be on November 22nd at 4 p.m. in this room.
Okay.
Unless there's objection.
Nope.
The landscaping update. Is there, where does that fit with council?
I have a copy for you that passed on October 3rd.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So once it's updated online, I can print out a whole new ordinance, but for now I'll give you just the
Super.
actual ordinance.
I do have one comment about that. Thank you.
Mm.
I think we're listing the wrong number for the maintenance and landscaping. According to, unless my old ordinance is out of date, I was showing that it should be 158.09 instead of 158.08. Is that possible? I know we passed it with that other number.
I don't know how that works in terms of. We can double check that this is 08, our minimum maintenance and landscaping requirement. But it's a,
Not sure.
So we're looking at number 158.08 as what has been passed.
The adopted version March 15th. 2021.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can double check on that
Then
and
it
it's
is
just a
what it is.
typo. I don't know. if
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
it's-
sure it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 9.
that's not anything that needs formal.
I don't think
anything
so.
Formal from us.
Okay.
Thank you to all for getting that. And to council for getting that, those clarifications in there. Our local designations, we have University Hall. Will, I know you did the building inventory for that. What I couldn't find was if there were ever photos
Yeah.
taken. There were, okay.
Yeah,
we
so
have
I
that
added
completed.
photos and I added some additional language that I got. The Wood County Auditor website has a nice history. And then I did mark in pink where we need some details that I wasn't sure maybe
Mm.
a couple of architects could look at and add to, but I marked that. And then I highlighted a discrepancy on the National Register where it says the courthouse was placed there in 1974 and then a jail a year later on June of 1974. So I think there's a discrepancy that I found there. But anyways, I
Oh,
can
that's
pass
for the
this
courthouse.
around. Yep. mhm.
Great.
So in other words, it's getting close.
Yeah.
So the pink markers are where we need to add.
Yes.
Yeah.
I tried to
This is-
highlight.
The courthouse has been on my to-do list. It's just taking me a little longer to get to.
It's a lot.
Yeah. You want to
I
take a look
just-
at it? Yeah.
And I'm sure we don't cover everything, but
Yeah.
it's a lot there.
John, I know you've been working on trying to
Yeah.
find some things for University Hall. for
Yeah, we're,
recognition.
just for anyone listening, we are hoping to create or have created with agreement from the university, some kind of a plaque that would hang in University Hall that would recognize that as being the first building on campus. And I'm still in the process of hearing back from President Rogers. I've written several times, and I will, with the permission of our commission, make a phone call and see if we can spearhead this a little bit quicker. What I'd like to see happen is at least a representative or two of us meet with Dr. Rogers or with his designated people to decide if this is a good idea and what they would like on that plaque and how we might go forward with it. So we're still at a standstill on that.
And which one was that?
University Hall.
Yeah. And hopefully that being in the city's newsletter this month will remind some people it's important.
Yeah, yeah.
I think on one of the websites, I was pulling up information and here's, I think it showed up. Is the main picture on the one of the website,
Oh,
one of the web pages.
Yeah. But there's nothing that's
It was just a picture.
hung in the building that I can find that.
This was just the exterior picture of the
Mm.
building.
yeah. So if
Okay.
you'll
Yeah.
make that phone call.
Yeah,
we can
sure.
keep it moving and see what we can do. 328 East Court Street. Has that been moved forward into? Public
City
hearing?
Council set that for a public hearing on November 21st at 6:45 PM in this room. So that's moving along, yes.
What was the date of that, Heather? Sorry.
Monday, November 21st at 6:45 PM.
Thanks. Okay, great. So our last item on the local designation is the Boomtown District or district. Will, I know you sent out some thoughts on how
I'd give
this
some
might
more
be
thought to it.
accomplished.
I'm still, the suggestion I'd sent to the commission was possibly designating historic districts by street. You'd have the Worcester Historic District, you'd have Church Street, you'd have Court Street, then Main Street, and whether to break it down into South Main, North Main, I thought, no, just Main Street. But to start out, when you read the ordinance, the properties within a district have to be contiguous.
Mhm.
And to me, it's like, if the 328 East Court Street's the first house to get designated, that might even be a good one to actually designate a district. And it's like, it would include, the district would include, we'd have to decide what the extent of it is.
Mhm,
And then we'd do the survey,
mhm.
like requires and go through. But I still like the idea of designations by street because it's, you can tell where they're at versus if we just have this historic district and
Mm,
it's like more helter-skelter houses. That was my thought, you know, and like say Worcester Avenue, it would be like may go clear down to Haskins Road, you know, maybe include part of the downtown over to Prospect possibly, maybe, it's just food for thought.
mhm.
I thought then you start, to me, what came to mind when you have a district, say like on Court Street, if that's a district, then people on Court Street, there may be more interest in getting their property, applying to have it designated. Because in other words, it's established as Court Street, historic district.
Right.
So you
The
can keep that-
identity of just that one
That's
area.
right. Then we had the identity of Worcester Avenue and Church Street,
Mhm.
possibly Eberly. I mean, there's a lot of history in these
In each
streets.
of those. Mhm.
Prospect, because of, the one we found, 129 Prospect has the Jimmy Hoffa wedding and wedding
Right.
house. I mean, that's my thoughts about the streets. And when I read through the ordinance, it talks, there's even in there, it talks about historic districts. It's got plural.
Mhm.
In one of the sections there. And then it says contiguous. And when I look up a definition, even it just says touching or in close proximity without actually touching.
Oh.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, that's the definition of contiguous.
Mm.
But
So in other words, it could go around, and I wouldn't go around something. To me, it would be all of a street. Like, because I think in the ordinance, it talks about so that it includes like alleys and across the street. Well, if you're designating a street, it would be both sides.
Right. So, and when you create a district, you're going to have contributing and non-contributing.
right,
So you
that's
don't
right,
have to just
Right.
skip over a
Right.
parcel because it's not, doesn't meet the criteria. It's just a
So-
non-contributing.
so they would be
portion.
part of that historic district, but they're not contributing to the district
Right.
as a
in terms of
historic
the
building.
historic,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I think, so really quickly, I just want to know, it is written in our ordinance that districts are initiated by the commission, but I just wanted to put it out to the community that we're always willing to hear feedback from, community members if they're interested in creating a district. We're not opposed to others bringing the ideas to us. Obviously, the individual listings, those are to be initiated by the property owner. But what seems useful in terms of the street by street is in terms of manageability, being able to, because when we were talking about Boomtown, the National Register boundary of Boomtown is, 200 properties.
And it kind of goes around.
Yeah, and
Yes.
it's, if it's something that we're trying to do grassroots level, it's a little bit, that's hard to manage. So, I don't know if, I was saying we still want to be thoughtful about how we go about it. So
Yeah.
we're not having these little pockets without, and it's overlay. So, eventually some of them are going to kind of combine into.
The only problem I see with that is that this is going to take decades to perhaps, I mean, if we do street by street.
Well, I think what you do is like say Court Street may be the first to try. And then maybe there's a house that somebody wants to do on Worcester. It gets accepted. And maybe then you start like working on that district. I wouldn't establish, I don't know. I mean, you could establish the district, but you'd do by question the survey to find out if there's interest.
Right.
Yeah, no, I know we need to do that. And I'm open to anything. I just want to get this started.
Yeah.
But if we do North Maple and it takes us a year to get that passed, and then we do Grove Street and that takes another year, I just see this never ending. It'd be nice if we could do a big district and all at once. Now I understand that the logistics of that.
Yeah.
That's a big thing to do.
I wonder if we can kind of get our toes wet and then it'll get, and I don't see I don't see doing a large district as something that, the 5 of us can handle. I think we would have to probably apply for a grant to hire someone to do something like that. So it just sort of, depends on how we want to move forward.
Well, Chris, you and I were talking a little bit earlier, and I do think there are certain streets, North Maple, for example, that I think we could move forward very quickly with. I think we need to try and experiment, and maybe that's it. And then we can see how we go from there.
But one thing in thinking too is like districts, I would think are going to be living. In other words, they're going to be
Right.
expanding probably at some point. When I hear the word overlay, and Chris probably can relate to this, I don't know if you did overlay drafting or may date myself, but that's what it was called before computers, was we do layers of Mylar on the pin bar to register them. So it'd be like, say, if I did in relationship to the historic districts, it'd be like if I had Maple Street Historic District and they could each be on a layer,
Right.
and then the overall overlay district would be the top one that
include
includes
them
all of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we have, is there any specific, we've talked about Court Street because of
Well,
328
just
East
because of
Fourth
that,
Street. Yeah.
yeah.
But if this is a route we want to go, we might want to think about what, where we would want to start, how we would want to proceed.
Maple Street.
Right. And I know we were looking at the Boomtown National Register District as sort of a jumping off point, and maybe we just look at that in
probably
little sections.
A lot of those are probably like on Church Street or Worcester.
Yeah. Down South Church, I think. Yeah. So I really appreciate your thoughts on it, because it from a manageability standpoint, it seems a little bit
I think
less
people will be
daunting.
proud of their district too, like where
Right.
their house is at, and it kind of gives it an identity within that district, and
Yeah,
it's connected to the other districts. And
right,
Well, I feel like you could also celebrate each street as they are completed.
right.
It's almost like maybe it doesn't matter that it's going to take a longer amount of time,
Yeah.
you know?
The only downside that I was like, in terms of like contiguous, is that the word it's in our, each district obviously would be contiguous, but we may not have continuity amongst each district, right?
I
that
don't see
they'll
the
be
districts necessarily touching.
right,
They may touch indirectly.
right.
Prospect touches Worcester. Worcester touches Church.
Right. I do think the more we get into some of our educational programs, I'm hoping to see some snowball of excitement when it comes to the districts, and we can
Okay.
get them moving. But does anyone want to kind of spearhead what that street by street could look like, just sort of a game plan of where we'd want to focus.
You mean what we would do first and how it would lay out after that?
And we can look at if we want to do one specific, what would that boundary look like? How far would it go? I mean, that in an exercise in itself will just be really helpful for us to, as a
Right.
learning, to learn how this process works, since would be our first.
I
Yeah.
was going to do an overlay on the map, and then I realized I
Mm.
didn't have tracing paper big enough to.
Oh.
The big
Thought-
map.
Thought it like even getting a small city map
Mhm.
to start establishing the boundaries of, tentative boundaries of a
Tentative, right.
district.
That would be great.
I don't know if we have any city maps that are 11 by 17 or something that's manageable. That would be good.
Yeah, we can do whatever you need to do.
You'd be willing to
Sure.
do some overlays?
Yeah, it won't be computer. I
No, that's fine.
learned how to do that years ago when it first came, but graphs.
I think it will at least give us an idea of the work ahead of us.
The draft of the districts.
So looking at the ordinance, the first step is the initiation, which is what we're perhaps preparing to do.
Right.
Recommendations to city council to establish a historic district. And it could be, like we're talking about, a street, that could be a larger area. Then the second step would be the written survey.
Right.
And then after that, we are talking about the boundaries of that district, or that street, or whatever we've decided upon. So whatever we might come up with, we will need, even before we do a survey, we would need to propose this to city council.
Right.
So how soon might we want to do that? You think at our next meeting, we could talk about it?
I could have something for it.
And we can
I'll get with
decide,
Heather to get a map, and then I can do some tracing, whatever.
and maybe then we can
copies and-
decide if we can agree on a area
Yeah.
that we want to propose. We can start drawing that up and
Yeah.
prepare for a recommendation for city council.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you. Was there anything additional we wanted to discuss in terms of district? Friends of the HPC, we have Historic Buildings of the Month. We have them slotted till July. And I kind of, sent out what I thought might be other buildings just to get people's minds thinking. Obviously, we're open to any building that someone would be interested in showcasing. But just so an update, we have the remainder of this year and January completed. Is that right, Heather? We have January done too.
That is being drafted still. There was a
Okay.
lot of information.
Yeah, we have to
Hey, we
narrow
got
some of
through,
it down.
got through November and December. Pretty good.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks to Mr. Martin in the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that.
And so there was a lot of interest actually in the write-up for the Milliken Hotel, which I had suggested for March. And the Frony Milliken House, actually, Larry Nader, who lives in the house, was willing to
Oh,
do
good.
that. So we can pull the information on the marriage mills for February. I think we've gotten quite a lot of information on that. So as far as I'm aware, I think we have authors for the up until July. So
Good.
we'll have to
Super.
start thinking about, what the remainder of 23 looks like in terms of what we might want to focus on.
It's a good list. Thanks for putting that
Yeah,
together.
The,
Great.
And some of that might change, we might hear some news about some, a property that we think would be interesting to showcase that isn't even on this list, but if anybody is interested in a property and wants to research it, we're happy to help showcase that. So,
Also, I reached out to the high school principal
Oh,
and he had
right.
sent that to the social studies teachers so that there might be some students or classes interested
yeah,
in this. So we'll see.
yeah. So, I'm excited. I'm glad to hear of people interested in,
It's it
Indeed.
tying into a book
oh,
and by street.
right? Yeah.
Streets.
Yeah. No, it's a great, hopefully people are finding those posts. It's on the city Facebook page, right? And the e-newsletter.
It's on the e-news Facebook.
Okay.
I have to write a specialized one that's only 1,500 characters. So I'm
Okay.
working on long version e-news, short
Mm,
version for social
okay.
media. And Twitter is almost impossible. I haven't even bothered because it's only 250 characters. So for now, I thought we'd stick to Facebook and the e-news.
Yeah.
There's too much good information to be able to cut certain
I
things
know,
out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and maybe it's because I'm a visual person, but I just love to see the photos. So that's easier on Facebook and the e-news than, I don't know how Twitter works, but I don't think photos on Twitter. So. Did we have any thoughts or comments on the list or remainder of 23 in terms of potential buildings?
Not at the moment. It looks great so far now.
Okay. Yeah, and I want to thank our friends for giving us so much
Yeah.
great content.
And we tried to do some connections November through January,
Yeah, right.
kind of the interwoven history here of, who lived here and who built this
Mhm.
building and who ended up with the building and what they did with it and how it's tied to a church, just
Yeah, it's really
Right.
good.
all those really, I guess it's needlework in a way of all these relationships.
Right. Oh. Item 6 on our agenda is the interpretive signage project. I have been in contact with some of the professors in the, I'm gonna get this wrong. I think it's the digital media, maybe, department. There's actually a professor who teaches a class on signage. So I'm gonna talk with her next week about, what maybe, if there's a way we could be added to that curriculum or get some input on, how they handle that in the classroom and ways we can build off of that. I know they probably have students who are looking for, some real world experience. I don't know if we're able to get this grant, maybe we can hire one of those students to help us out with that. But in terms of the grant application, that's due in February. It's not an extensive application, but I did wonder if we wanted to start that before the end of the year because, and it'll go quick.
Well, I did reach out to the Sentinel and BG Independent, and they're willing to write articles about, really having all the professionals, professional volunteers
Great.
come and, have like a in-town meeting just to drum up ideas and thoughts and what are the possibilities.
Yeah.
Maybe after you talk with your university contact, we could put together like times, because I think that's all we need, or like what are
Right.
the details, like what
Right.
what are the times that we want to set for those meetings. Maybe there's 2 options. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah. Our call.
think they're
I'll
ready once
call
we-
for, yeah,
Right. All for professionals.
yeah. And do you envision that happening? I mean, I was envisioning that happening kind of simultaneously with the grant, review.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
We don't
for
need to
sure.
wait.
No, 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 no.
Yeah.
Like, I think we had said November is when we
Right.
thought that would be a good time.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. We'll look at dates because we'll have to see what, with,
Well, I think if you could get the class involved, it'd
Yeah.
be really cool to say that in the article, like
Right.
in partnership, right, with the university. I feel like that's sort of
yeah,
maybe after you have your meeting, you can connect with
Yeah,
me
well-
and text me and we'll
right. We'll get,
cook it up.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
We'll get those scheduled and, so that's, I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look at the CLG grant application. It's not,
Pretty light.
yeah,
It's
it is pretty
easy.
light.
Yeah.
But I think we'll want to start. Once we know if we'll have matching funding, we'll want to start kind of putting that together.
And I think I emailed you a copy of a CLG grant from Athens. So Athens did a fairly similar project, although it was led by, it sounded like a graduate student from the university. So, and theirs is more interpretive, where you would have it on an app, kind of like a walking audio tour, but also historical markers.
Oh,
So I got a copy of the application, which it gave us what they requested, and then their matching share, which I thought was helpful, and a description of the project. So again, it sounded very similar. And actually, I met at the Heritage Ohio conference, talk about later, the person in charge of this grant, and he did a session with 2 other people and basically said, this is kind of low hanging fruit. We want CLGs to apply. Out of 80 CLGs, I only had 15 this year. And so I think he was really encouraging of wanting to see new CLGs apply, and that that is something that they're looking for. So I feel like, we have a really good chance.
Yeah.
Not only at that grant money, but a lot of other grant money being a new community that's a CLG, along with historic tax credits, which we've already talked about before.
Right.
But it was really good to meet this person, get his contact information, and we already have a little bit of a relationship, and so he'll be looking for us, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's great.
that's great, Heather.
Yeah, it was nice to hear because Athens just did that application last year, right?
Yes. mhm.
So, yeah, we have some precedents and
And there's also a list of SHPO priorities that do not require matching grants, which it sounds like those change annually. So I will be curious to touch base with him and see if those are going to change into the next grant cycle.
Mhm,
So that's something to keep in mind too.
mhm. When will we know if we will be able to have any matching funds?
I really don't think that will be until November,
Okay,
mid or late, because we just submitted our budget last week, and
Right.
then, they'll be flushing that out. You always want more than what we really have. So,
Right.
so they'll have to prioritize, and then we'll have to have budget hearings with departments and council. So I think we have some time on that.
Okay,
And remind me, is it a 1-to-1 match?
60/40.
60/40. Oh,
But the good news is you can use volunteer staff time. It's not just straight up
Right.
financials is how I'm reading this.
Oh,
So
good.
that's good. Mhm.
Okay.
Is anyone interested in sort of, being the author of that grant application?
I'm willing to support it.
Okay. Yeah. I've never
Like
done a
edit
grant
and do a second review. I'll do it with somebody.
Anyone, I've never done a grant application.
I've never either.
No. The new one for us.
Well, we'll do it together. Okay.
Well, I'll
You would
review
be
it.
We'll do it together with Heather's help.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Definitely happy to help. Obviously, I did some
Okay.
research. I did
Right.
grants before. I think it's just following what they tell you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he did give some tips about what communities tend to miss. So I think that will be
Oh.
helpful to kind of get to the top of the list if we need to.
Right.
If it's drafted, I'm happy to review and add and tweak and all of that.
Great.
Yeah, if we can, because I think we'll want that completed by our January meeting, because it'll be due before our February meeting.
Right.
Well, we have anything else on the signage, and funding? Okay. We'll get into our public relations and educational projects. As Heather mentioned, she and I attended the Heritage Ohio Conference, which was, Toledo hosted it this year, beginning of October. We went to a specific session on the tax credit programs, down in Findlay, and I forget the name of that building.
Jones Mansion.
The Jones Mansion.
Mhm.
They received tax credits to rehabilitate that.
When
that
we say
building.
he, this was a retired high school teacher in Findlay
Mhm.
that just took on this mansion, basically him and his wife, really him.
Right.
And I think it's just fascinating what he did with very little money. And he went after these tax credits. He said, really the state helped him significantly, and that
Right.
they're truly, it's a partnership. It's not us versus them. It's really them holding my hand the whole time. And I just thought it was a really fascinating story of how he received this mansion, and it was a passion of his since a young boy to really protect it. And
Yeah.
really long story, but
Yeah.
to see it firsthand, before and after pictures,
Mhm.
and just to hear someone from the state say that this really is, you just being a new community puts you right up, you get the full score by just
Right.
being a new community for that portion of scoring, which I thought, again, it's such an opportunity
Mhm.
if somebody were willing to put in the work and really see a vision of their building like this person did. And,
Right.
he's made it very successful, and he's still working on it. He'll say it wasn't easy, but, sweat equity and
Yeah.
what he did there was really amazing. If you ever have a chance to see it, I would encourage you to do that. And again, it wasn't somebody that had a lot of money. That was, it was his passion, and he was going to get it done. So,
Yeah.
fascinating story. So that was day one, Monday. We saw the
Right.
Jones Mansion and heard about historic tax credits.
Yeah. And we don't have any state tax credit projects in Wood County, let alone Bowling Green.
Correct.
So, yeah, we've got opportunity here for sure. I attended a session that discussed a lot about like community engagement, which was really useful. And just some, ideas of how to interact with the community that are maybe less formal, in terms of, I forget which town it was, and this was a company that does this nationally. So they were in Maine or something when they did this program, and they partnered with some of a local brewery that was doing a beer that was like about love. It was February. So then the group put together these coasters that just said like, what do I love about, my town, whatever that town's name was. And people wrote on the back, and they kind of, just put it on a pin board. Just a nice way to say, to give your tribute to the community. But, recognizing, getting people to think about what do we love about our town. I just thought that was a neat program that they highlighted there. Maybe something we can think about for future. I know there was a session.
I attended
many
one about
sessions that
the
we
National
attended.
Register, which I thought was interesting
Right.
because, a lot of these communities have their established districts from several decades ago. Well, she talked about how, expanding the districts now is something you can do and want to consider because as our buildings age in our districts, there's going to be expansions to look at doing. So I thought that was
Mhm.
interesting. And she went over the process of how that works. And then they had Ashland there who literally just had their first district. So Ashland went through their process of what they did with their downtown to get that engagement and how that worked. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, there was
Yeah.
one about, again, getting, finding the money. You know, you have a
Right.
building you want to rehab, and how do you find money? And there's a lot of pools of money that I didn't realize are out there that I thought was really interesting. So we got a copy of those resources. They talked about the Ohio History Fund, how really, I don't want to say easy, it's competitive, but yet they're probably the only grant that does actually building and mortar work for a grant. So one was adding a handicap ramp in Toledo to a historic home. So they're able to tour that with somebody with disabilities. So again, he said not all the projects are really exciting to some people, but you know, to be able to access that museum was something that was really important. So again, I thought that was good to note that they do bricks and mortar
Yeah.
projects.
And that
So,
was the
Ohio History Fund.
grant.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great one. We'll have to look at how we might want to pursue that grant.
And you do have to be a nonprofit or a city of
City.
some sort. Mhm.
It was a 2.5 days of a lot of stuff. And I got to be, a total geek about about historic preservation for 2.5 days.
It's reinvigorating when they
Yeah.
come in and call your historic preservation commissions heroes. That was one of
Oh,
the first
yeah.
keynote speaker that you're really heroes of, protecting the community story,
Right.
and buildings are a part of that story. And once they're gone forever. So, I mean, it was very inspirational. I would say.
Yeah. It was useful too. Lots of information we're still digesting. We had, our Wood County Museum did their gala fundraiser. It was virtual again this year. I don't know if anyone got a chance to bid on anything. I didn't win anything, but I tried with it. So I hope that went well for them. Good fundraiser for the museum. Our future workshops we have, or events, the audio tour. I had been in contact with Ted Long, who was working on an audio tour of our downtown. And we'd had a couple areas where he was looking for some more information. So I need to see if he's been able to find anything. We might have to just pull those specific locations out of the tour if there's just not a lot of information to find, but I'll reach back out to him before our next meeting and see how that's going, because he did want to kind of use us as his testers on how well it works.
Chris, who were you working with on that?
His name is Ted Long.
Mm-hmm.
He's with Holy Toledo History,
Oh, right. Okay.
and he has a series of audio tours throughout most of everything is north of the Maumee River, but he went here to BGSU, so he kept telling me he wanted to come down to BG and do one.
Right.
So,
That's right. Okay.
yeah, we were happy to.
Would you want to
Okay.
invite him to come and talk to us about his
Oh, yeah, that
research
would
so
be great.
far? Maybe we
I'll
could have him here next meeting.
Yeah, I'll see if he's available for
Yeah,
the next meeting. Our tax credit workshop, I had initially was probably a little too ambitious and put it in for January. But January and February are my busy months because of the tax credits. So I might wait till beginning of March. Might be a better timeline, just but we've got a couple people, the gentleman in Findlay who did the Jones Mansion. He said he'd be willing to come, give his insight. And we're seeing if we can get the session Heather and I attended at the conference. We had Mary Angela Fisher, I think is how you say her last name. She's the director of our of the tax credit side of our SHPO. She did I thought explained things really well. I don't know if she will be able to attend. We might be able to, but someone from SHPO would be great. And then the state side, Lisa Brunell, she was able to do a lot I highly doubt she'll be available. She's very busy, but we can, so the goal will be to run through what the federal tax credit program looks like and what the state tax credit program looks like and kind of how they run side by side. So,
And I was going to add the state tax credits. They're so busy right now because the state increased those from 25% to 35%. So that's
Right.
why she is packed, but they will also want to hit areas like Wood County that are in their minds, ripe for these because it's never been used before. So
Yeah.
that's good news for us to have those speakers.
yeah, and the state funds have doubled for this current fall round, the spring, and then the following fall and spring. So this round and then the next 3 rounds they have double the amount of money to hand out. So
And I'm happy
Yeah.
to help with that as it
The
relates
workshop?
from,
Oh,
like
great.
from the investor perspective. And
yeah,
they're usually in the deals that I've done from
right.
in the banking world, although I now work for a nonprofit. They were paired with low income housing tax credits.
Mhm.
It was really uncommon for us to do a historic only
Yeah.
investment, but I'm happy to help in any way, like as a,
Great.
yeah,
Yeah.
investor perspective.
Right.
I'm just curious, the project that you guys reviewed at the Heritage, who was the investor in his project? Who purchased the credits?
Oh, for the
Oh.
Jones Mansion?
Mm-hmm.
I don't,
You don't know?
I don't know.
Yeah, we didn't get into that
Yeah.
Okay.
detail.
I was just curious.
Yeah. Hopefully he'll be able to join our workshop and he can
Yeah.
touch on how that, who that was and how that
And
was.
there's so many resources for developers and people who want to do that. It's really, I mean, there's a lot of consultants out there that
Mhm.
will help, qualify the QREs or the qualified rehabilitation expenditures.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's how the credits are generated. From an investor's perspective, they want to make sure, like, okay, from a tax and accounting, point of
Right.
view, these are
Yeah.
every T is crossed and I's dotted.
Right. Yeah.
And from his perspective, he knew nothing about
Right.
this and
Right.
pretty much did it on his own with the help of the state. That's why I think
Yeah.
he's so inspirational to be able to hear him tell a story here in Bowling Green.
Right.
Now, these tax credits are mainly for commercial buildings.
They are for income producing properties.
Income.
So
So-
anything anything commercial and then anything residential that has 2 or more units.
I'm just thinking about downtown Bowling Green. If we could see how many of our Bowling Green retail owners might be interested, and we could really give them a pep talk and
Right.
hopefully get
exactly.
them interested in coming to this.
Yeah.
And some of the properties would be more applicable than others. I know the building that Juniper is in has been renovated already. So unfortunately, a lot of the history is lost in some ways.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
yeah, there are some buildings that would, I think, be great
Yeah.
Right.
opportunities.
Yeah. There is definitely a lot of opportunity for, and
Mhm.
federal tax credits are 20% of your qualified expenditures come back in tax credit and then up to 35 for the state. So
Mm.
it's a good amount of chunk of change to get back if
Mhm.
you, can take the time like Eric did to go
Mhm.
through all that. But yeah, so that'll be what that workshop focuses on. I think there's a lot of good that can come out of the program if we can get people interested in it.
Mhm.
But if it's okay with everyone else, I'd like to push it to March because January is just,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a little too quick. Tell your BG history session. That was sort of our idea of like an open
Yeah.
mic
Mhm.
session, right? Is that something we want to tentatively, come up with when we might want to schedule something like that?
Yeah, we could. I mean, thinking, how would you want to propose that to the community? Like,
That's why I almost envision it being sort of an open mic
Yeah,
type of event.
no, for sure. But I was
Yeah.
just thinking,
Could you
Like-
tie it to a special month, like the
Like
National Preservation Month in May? I mean, no, it's looking outward, but a ways.
Mhm. Yeah, like or yes, in addition, something big that we are trying to do, right? Like,
Mhm.
I wonder, when do you hear about the grant? Like, when do we hear, if it goes in
Oh.
February, would we hear about it?
Not sure.
Because I
I'll look
think,
at that.
yeah, like I'm just thinking, like, if we were successful in getting the grant, it would be pretty neat to have discussion around, hey, we've won this grant. Come in and tell your BG history, your stories, as we develop and fine tune all of this signage
Right.
and celebrate the downtown. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Kind of like going hand in hand
Yeah.
with all of that.
I'll look at when that grant gets awarded.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it's an incredibly long.
And then if
process,
it
but-
doesn't work out that we unfortunately don't get the grant, we can still do it in May.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, just anyway. But it'd be cool to do those things together
Yeah.
and really start the energy rolling as it relates to celebrating historical
Yeah,
elements
history.
of BG.
Yeah. We'll kind of plan for May-ish right now and see what,
Mhm.
I'll get with you on what that.
I think
May-ish.
May-ish. I think what's important if we do this is where we do it.
Well, I offered Juniper to do it, but
I know that'd be great. I was
But
just thinking
anywhere else?
maybe we could do Claysell or, another historic building downtown. Claysell would, I don't know what's going on in that building. Do you know, Christina?
I do not. I'm sorry. I
Oh.
know. I think it's an event center.
Yeah.
But I
Last
don't-
I knew,
yeah.
yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
That my first thought with historic tax credits would be that building.
Oh, I know.
I know. Chris and I are like scheming,
I
but
love
that would be.
it'd be a
Ooh.
great building. Yeah. I'm not sure,
I have no
we
idea.
can- I'm sure the SID has contact information if we wanted to try and reach out to the owner of the Claysell.
Well, I can find that out too. You
We-
have
there's
information.
out
Okay.
there.
Heather knows.
Uh,
Heather knows.
But yeah, putting that in a historic building could be
Yeah.
extra exciting. Um,
I think the owner is not he doesn't live
Not
here in
local.
Bowling Green.
Right.
Isn't that right, Heather? He doesn't
Well,
live here in Bowling
it's-
Green.
There's a property owner and then it's being leased. So
Right.
the person who leases it, I believe, does live here or
For
yeah, I
sure.
believe he
But
does
the
live here.
owner does not.
correct.
Right. Yeah.
okay. I've never been in there, but I'm assuming there's still some, if it's an event
Yes.
center, there's still some sort of place where you could.
Yeah, there's
Get
still
up
a
and tell your
stage.
stories. Yeah.
There's a stage and you set up chairs.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of concerts there, BGSU music department. Not recently though, and that's what I'm curious about what's happening there.
Yeah.
And maybe it could be a fundraiser as well. We could, or a donation box by the door as people
Mhm.
come in. I mean, we're not going to get a lot of money, but
Mhm.
it could be useful.
I
Yeah.
agree. It would be great to have it in a historic building. Also, I know people are drawn to beer.
Right.
There's also that for a fundraising
Coffee.
type of event. Yeah. Or coffee or
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree, having it in a historic building would be.
Well, it's something we can,
Mhm.
we can see if that's even feasible and then maybe by next meeting or the meeting after, we can kind of nail down a time frame for that session.
Okay.
Do you have anything on the Take a Hike program? I know you did a kind of update last meeting, so.
Yeah, there's no real like update on that. I think,
Yeah.
and this is probably something we could take off the list. I mean, so I know that the library has their thing and you're doing what you're doing with the audio. I think that sort of rolls
And the-
into
and the
one. It would be
music-
like an evolution of what you're doing. I feel
Right.
like, you know,
Right.
be like first getting the audio down and really identifying where, and then maybe evolving from there
Into the actors.
into the
and-
actors, right? Or the event portion
Right.
of it.
The museum does something similar
Right.
already, so it might just be duplicating what they already do and do
Yeah.
very well, I think.
Mhm.
All right. We have lobby visitation. Do we have anyone who has anything they want to share today? No, that's fine if you. Uh-huh. I didn't know we had to sign in. Back there. Oh,
I'm Rose Drain. I live at 228 East Court Street. Um, The Clazel Theater was where I had my first job.
Oh,
I earned $1 an hour as a concession stand worker. And then I was promoted to ticket sales and I earned $1.25 an hour. I got my money every week in cash in a pay envelope. And so if you'd ever be interested in having a Building of the Month article for the Clazel, I think I'd be a good fit for that.
oh, great. Thank
I'll
you.
also do some personal research and go there on karaoke night to, which is every Thursday, I think, to see what the current state of the theater is. And I'd be happy to contact the person who's leasing the building at this point to see if he'd be open
Oh.
to having a share your
Another- Bowling
Bowling Green Stories event there. I could kick it off with my story about the Clazel Theater. So-
yeah.
Also, I'd be interested in helping with any of the research that's needed on Ted Long, the buildings that he needs to know more about.
Okay.
So I can send
s-
you an email about that if you want.
Yeah, I
And
can
you-
send you the couple properties that
Oh,
he was
okay.
looking at.
All right, great.
Yeah.
And I don't know if another friend is available to write the Marriage Mill article. If somebody else wants to volunteer, that's great. But if not, I can help with that.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Rose.
Mhm.
Anyone else would like? No?
I've enjoyed reading some of the historic handouts that you all brought last couple of
Yes.
months. So
you.
thank you for doing that. I think that's great. Things that I certainly didn't know anything about. So I was just reading about the Arms Collectors Association.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
So I want to point out two things for the record. I had forwarded you an email from Bell Fountain about their plaques that they have utilized and put on
Yeah.
buildings. And they use sponsors. And then they have a nice webpage that I think looking into the future that we could work on, where they have a map of where the plaques are, a picture of each building, and then you can click on that building and it gives the history of what's on the plaque.
Mm.
So I think that's something that's doable into the future.
Yeah.
And they had sponsors, I think they were around $700. So they had
Mhm.
sponsors at the bottom of the plaque that could go on the building. So I think it's a good model to look at. Again, I forward that to you. And then also I forgot to mention from Heritage Ohio,
Oh,
they had a session about basically this place matters and community awareness. And one community did this place matters signs and
Mhm.
properties and got an example of their slide.
yeah.
But I thought this is something to think about down into probably May for
Mhm.
National Preservation Month.
Mhm.
But I think it could work twofold. We could purchase the signs potentially with our budget we still have.
Right.
We
Mhm.
could have people in the community that want to place the signs on their property. But to do so, we would want a brief description about the history of their home or building. then we could build our web page on the city website, basically, copy paste their description of their property, and then they would get their sign. That way we could even have a QR code on the sign
Yeah.
that people walking by the home or building could scan it and then take it to our web page and look at the history of that address.
Right.
But we could have a picture so they could see, oh, that's the house I saw and I want to read about. So
About
just, I think
history.
it's something that's doable.
Mhm.
Maybe it sounds like a lot, but I think if we put the onus on the owner to give us the history of the property, we could continue to build that database of information and then maybe use them as a historic building of the month down the road. So
Right.
just an idea. I think it's something we could look to for May.
I like
Yeah.
it because it fits in and we've talked about this a little bit with the signage, the system of the signage. It's sort of like, there's the downtown element, there's the residential element, there's all these different, and it'll take more than one structure, one architectural design for all of the different things that we want to celebrate.
Mhm.
And I like that one. That one is something that I feel like we could implement right away
Right.
in our budget.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, we could do our own little, whatever you
Our
want
own
to
slogan.
do logo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. I think he had a
Um,
couple other examples actually of different signs. I'd have to look at the slideshow.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, the history of that. I wondered why they got rid of that displacement. Yeah, so these are they're like, the yard signs,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
something that we could, even
Mhm.
reuse, if we, but it gets people engaged in the people who are interested in putting this in their property. And then also, as you're walking around and can learn more about our community. So, yeah, I forgot that was something I think it would be great to do. If we wanted them out by Preservation Month, we would probably need the sign up in beginning of April, I would think. Does that seem like a reasonable timeline? So. There's history here. Oh.
We can add to the agenda.
Yes. Yeah. That'll
Plan
be
ahead.
definitely in our November meeting. We can talk more about May
Can,
Preservation Month.
can I ask a question about the new zoning proposal and how that might impact on our Historic Preservation Commission, especially if we would do an overlay district? Who has the authority there? If there would be a conflict between what the new zoning rules might be for the city.
So I don't think there's a conflict. The historic preservation ordinance is still the same wording. You still have an overlay district. That overlay still applies to the protection of that building. If the owners were to apply.
Well, for example, if the distance from the street to a new building might be proposed, but we were saying this is a historic property, that wouldn't be appropriate. Do we have the authority to reject that?
Right now, you have zero authority because we have nothing designated.
I
If that
know.
makes sense. So it's kind of hard to say the what ifs when the protection doesn't kick in until a property owner or the commission writes a district. The whole goal of that is to protect the facade of the building
Right.
as much as possible.
Right.
So
So-
setbacks and all that don't have anything to do, quite frankly, with historic preservation. That's a separate issue.
I'm
If
hearing.
a building already is there, it's.
Even the uses within the building.
Correct. You're
Right.
exactly right. Mhm.
But should there be a building within a district in the future and it has an addition, it's up, they want to propose an addition that meets the new zoning, they would still be required to submit a COA to the commission. We would still review it per
Correct.
that to see if it meets the standards.
So we could say, no, you may not do that. Correct.
Right.
Oh, and we would supersede that zoning, the city zoning rule.
No, I think we're saying two different paths here. So you really couldn't do anything until you had your COA first.
Okay.
Zoning approval couldn't happen, a zoning permit. And a zoning permit may not be needed for something. It depends what the project is. You may need a COA because you're doing a new roof, but that doesn't mean you need a zoning permit.
Right.
So it's kind of a what if. It's hard to visualize all this, but it's two different things in my mind, how it would operate.
Okay. I'm just on Maple Street, but our neighbors are a little anxious about what's being discussed for the city. And I just want to help represent them.
Yeah, I think it's important to put the facts
Yeah.
out there. Like
Yeah.
right now, we would love it if your street would
Yeah.
come into the commission and start the process.
That's why I think maybe we should move quickly if we can.
Mhm. On our district.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do they have public hearings, more public hearings on this zoning?
Mhm.
They
Yeah,
do.
Mhm.
Okay.
yeah, they'll be
Good, so we
required to
can
have a public hearing.
Okay. So we'll, yeah, because I have, I've heard, there's thoughts and comments. So yeah, that's why we have public hearings, right? So
Right.
people can go out
Mhm.
and learn about what it all entails. So. But yeah, until we have our districts,
Yep.
they're not protected.
Right.
So we want to get those. We want to protect our historic fabric, so. Do we have any other lobby visitation? No, yeah. Hmm.
Second thing, I tried to find out just all payers. Under bicentennial book, depends.
I'm sure we could fill that in for you here. And I did get this book, just so you know. If you ever need to borrow it, I have the
Oh,
I don't want to say that word,
Cess-
sorry.
Centennial.
I don't want to chop that
How
up.
you say that?
That's bicentennial.
Sesquicentennial.
But this is really good too.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So, I mean, so many resources around here that are,
Mhm.
Heather and I were joking that we could just spend, days and days just going through the rabbit holes of all of our resources, but yeah. Okay, well, if we don't have any other comments, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
I'd make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay. All right. We have to vote, yeah?
Yes.
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 Aye, yes.
All right.
All right,
Good.
thank you.
Are we adjourned?
We're adjourned.
Okay.